Chapter 6. Hopelessly Devoted. Despite their wrestling match on the beach, Carrie and Robert remained friends, and Carrie even went over to the Sea Marina in the middle of the week and helped Robert and his father with some of the refurbishing of the dock. On Thursday, we had a bad storm. The rain fell so hard the drops were bouncing on the streets, pounding on the windows and roofs, making the walls of our house beat like the outside of a drum. Daddy couldn't go to his lobster boat, so he drove us to and from school just to have something to do. It was dark and dreary and unusually cold for this time of the year. It didn't begin to clear up till late Friday afternoon. At least we knew we did a good job on the dock, Carrie told me in the cafeteria, thanks to Carrie. The storm didn't have any effect on it at all. Carrie blushed at the compliment. The three of us had been inseparable over the past week. I could see we were becoming the subject of idle chatter. Some of the more jealous girls dipping into their dark wells of innuendo and nastiness to bring up new vicious rumors. Some left a note stuck on the door of my hall locker. It read, "Does Grandpa still sit and watch you while Robert and you kiss?" I ripped it into a dozen pieces, afraid what Carrie might do if he saw it. He didn't mention anything, but I sensed that he was getting ugly notes as well. If anyone bothered Robert, he didn't tell me either. However, on Friday morning, just before lunch, Carrie got into a fight with Peter Thomas in the boys' locker room. Whatever Peter said had put Carrie into a wild rage. He bloodied Peter's nose and gave him a welt on his forehead. I asked Carrie what happened, but he wouldn't talk about it. He wouldn't say anything in the principal's office, and once again, he was suspended for fighting. The school called Mommy and Daddy, and when they came to pick us up, Mommy cried in front of Carrie, which was punishment enough. During the drive home, he sat with his head lowered and listened while Daddy spoke softly, almost like a man pronouncing a death sentence on a convict. "You're not a boy anymore, Carrie. You do a man's work. You've been doing it for some time now. When you're a boy, your parents are judge and jury. They're your government, your court judges. They pass sentence on your bad deeds. But now, you have to live with yourself and what you do. You have to be responsible for your actions and answer to a higher voice than mine. You hurt all of us, and you have to live with that. If they decide to throw you out of school, that'll be that." "It wasn't my fault, Dad," Carrie protested. "Why wasn't it? You beat that boy good." "He had it coming to him." "Why?" Daddy pursued. Carrie shook his head. "He had it coming to him." "Well, when they make you judge and jury, you can decide that, but for now, you sit home instead of being in class where you need to be the most." Daddy looked to me to see if I could add anything to clear up the mystery. I just shook my head. "I'm tired," Daddy said as soon as we got home. "I'm going to bed early tonight." "I'll send up some supper for you, Jacob," Mommy called after him. The air was so thick with gloom, I thought we'd have to slice our way through the sadness. May, locked up in her world of silence, nevertheless sensed the tension and sat at Carrie's feet, gazing up at him with big sad eyes from time to time, which only made him feel more miserable. He skipped supper too and went up to his attic hideaway. I heard him moving furniture. When I looked up at the ceiling, I saw he put something over the hole. Then he was quiet. I often went up to Carrie's workshop to watch him work on the models. It was a small room because of the way the roof slanted, but he had a nice-sized table that he worked his model ships. The ships he had completed were lined up on half a dozen shelves. He was the most proud of his sailing ships. They held the center stage of each of the shelves. When he had been silent for over a half hour, I went up to see him. He sat with his back to me and continued to work. "What's that?" I asked. "A replica of the HMS Victory, the flagship of the British Admiral Horatio Nelson," he said. "I feel like working on warships these days. Carrie, what happened between you and Peter? Please tell me." What's the difference? It's over and done, he said. Is it over, Carrie? He turned and I saw his eyes were bloodshot. It won't be over till the both of us are out of there, Laura, he fired back at me. Why? I pursued. He returned to his model and worked. Carrie, I want to know why. Why won't it be over? Because they won't stop, he mumbled. They enjoy doing it too much. Doing what? Belittling me, belittling you, saying disgusting things about us. What things? I asked, anticipating an answer. Little butterflies of panic in my stomach. Things like, do you and Robert take turns? Do you pick a card to see who goes first? Or do you all do it at once? You happy now that you know? He looked so strange. I couldn't tell if it was rage or sadness shining brightly in his eyes. No, I said, but you've got to ignore them, Carrie. They're just spiteful and mean. I won't ignore them. I'll stuff their garbage words down their garbage mouths, he vowed. But you didn't win in the end, Carrie, I said softly. You're the one that's suspended from school. It doesn't matter. I get some satisfaction at least. They know that they'll have to pay dearly for every remark, he said. Then he fixed his glare on me. No one said anything to you. Bothered you? He got his answer with my silence. You wouldn't tell me anyway, he said. No, because look what happens, I said. You want some supper? I'll bring something up. I'm not hungry. I started down the ladder. Laura, he called. What? Don't let anyone make fun of you when I'm not in school. They won't, I said. He went back to his model ship. Robert called to find out what happened and expressed his sympathy. I was afraid if he knew the whole truth, he too would get into fights, and I'd be responsible for the two of them doing badly in school. You're still coming over tomorrow night, aren't you, Laura? Robert asked. Yes, I said, even though I knew I would regret leaving Carrie locked up in his own dark, unhappy world. I'll be there by 5, okay? Okay. That night I lay awake for the longest time, with my eyes wide open, thinking what terrible things had we done to cause all this nasty gossip about us. We were twins, born minutes apart. We had been connected in our mother's womb, and the birth was a great separation for each other as well as for her. When we were younger, we did cling to each other more than most brothers and sisters, even those close in age. I couldn't recall a day or night when we were apart. I was sure most of our friends believed that when one of them said something to us, the other one would soon know it. They all sensed there was no secrets I would keep from Carrie or he from me. He just naturally hovered over me and protected me as we grew older. Perhaps our friends resented this magical connection. Perhaps they were jealous, and that was why they wanted to hurt us. It was easy for them to turn to Carrie's devotion to me into something dirty and sick. And then a more fearful voice, tiny, hiding in the back of my mind, stepped up to say, maybe Carrie was so angry because he realized some of what they said was true. He was too devoted to you. Maybe he realized his own problem, and maybe his violence was a way to try to deny it. I turned over in bed and buried my face in the pillow to shut off that tiny voice and the memories it evoked. Memories of strange looks, lingering touches, intimate words that were meant for lovers, not siblings. I was afraid for Carrie, afraid that if I gave this tiny voice even an iota of credence, I would avoid Carrie's eyes, finding his touch burning, and flee from being alone with him. The separation that had begun the day we were born would reach its final stage soon. Carrie, my poor beloved brother, would be alone. I cried for him, feeling anger and confusion as well as shame. He was still above me, shut up in his attic workshop. It was very quiet, but I thought I heard him crying. I listened hard, but it was silent again. The wind died down, yet there was still enough to make the walls creak. Outside, the moon played peekaboo with the parting clouds. The surf rose and fell against the dark sand, resembling a giant wet hand reaching out to the ocean. Crawling out onto the sand. Night was our respite. the time to put aside trials and torments of the day, to rest our weary bones in the stuff that troubled the dark corners and welcome sleep and long-cherished friend. I closed my eyes and prayed and waited for the surprise of morning. The next day, Daddy and Carrie went to work right after breakfast and were gone almost all day. They were just coming home when Robert pulled in to pick me up for our date. Both Daddy and Carrie knew I was going to Robert's for dinner, but not even Carrie knew that Robert's parents had left for Boston and wouldn't be home till late the next day. With all the trouble circling our lives recently, I was eager to leave our gloomy house. I felt guilty about not telling Daddy and Mommy that Robert's parents wouldn't be there, but I knew if I did, Daddy would scowl and say he didn't think it would be proper. Instead, I waved goodbye to both of them and got into Robert's car. "You all right?" he asked. I forced a smile and took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, fine," I said. Robert squeezed my hand gently and then backed out of the driveway. A moment later, we were headed toward the end for our romantic evening. The Royces had done a lot of work since I visited last. I could tell when we pulled into the driveway, their work was almost complete. Robert gave me a grand tour, taking me to the sitting room, to the office, and showing me some of the guest suites. All of them were beautifully decorated, bright and airy, especially the rooms that looked out to the beach and ocean. With this new paint, flooring, wall covering, fixtures, and furniture, the Sea Marina now ranked up with some of our finest inns. "We're advertising in big newspapers and magazines," Robert explained. "Mommy and Daddy are very hopeful." "As they should be," I said. "You and your parents did a wonderful job, Robert." "Thank you." Being alone in the refurbished, sparkling new inn made us both somewhat nervous. Without realizing it, we were being very formal and very polite. Robert opened doors for me, kept his hands on my back. When we climbed the stairs, we avoided each other's eyes and talked only about the end. It was almost as if we were strangers who had just met. "I guess we should think about dinner. I bought everything you told me that we needed," he said, and we headed for the kitchen. I had helped him peel potatoes and heat up pots of water for the vegetables while I breaded some sautéed flounder fillets. Robert and I had set the dining room table, and he had their finest china and silverware laid out with linen napkins and crystal goblets beside them. They were tall white candles and 2 candelabra in the center of the table. Over the new sound system that had been piped into the most rooms downstairs, he played soft romantic music. "Do your parents know about this, Robert?" I asked. "Oh, sure," he said. "Mom suggested I use our nicest stuff. Although I didn't tell them about this," he added, and he produced a bottle of Portuguese wine. "I thought it would be all right. This is a special occasion," he added. I nodded and went back to our dinner preparations. When everything was ready, I told him to light the candles and sit at the table. I would bring in the meal. "Let me help," he said, but I insisted that he went into the dining room. I brought in the food and Robert poured glasses of wine. Shyly, we made a toast to the Sea Marina. "May she have a successful maiden voyage," Robert declared. We began to eat. Robert raved about everything. We laughed and drank more wine and pretended we were the owners and then the guests. "This is our honeymoon," he suggested. "Where are we from?" "New York." "No, the Midwest." "That way we haven't seen the ocean," I followed. "And now that we have, we're enchanted. We don't want to leave, ever." He changed his posture, trying to take on the demeanor of an old, stuffy businessman. "I'm even thinking of looking for work here. Did I tell you, my dear?" I imitated Grandma Olivia and looked down my nose at him. "No, you didn't." "I looked at a small beach house yesterday. Nothing elaborate, but it has a wonderful view. It would be a great place to raise children. They would have the world's biggest sandbox," he said. "Sandbox. My children won't be permitted to dirty their little hands and feet in an old sandbox." We laughed and drank more wine. Suddenly, Robert reached across the table and put his hand over mine, fixing his warm eyes on me and giving me a wonderful, winsome smile. Have I told you how happy I am, how utterly complete I feel when I'm with you, Laura? It's as if the world was created just for you and me. There's no one else, and all the beauty is ours alone to behold. Whether it was the wine or his words that brought an exciting warm tingle in my stomach, I don't know. All I was certain of is that I felt overwhelming with love for Robert, and I never wanted to let go of his hand. He leaned over and kissed me, a short, soft kiss, so tender and gentle it was more like a kiss in a dream. Laura, he said, how lucky I am I found you. Me too, I said, barely above a whisper. He held on to my hand, and slowly, ever so slowly, he stood up and pulled me toward him. He kissed me. It was the sort of kiss that grew deeper each moment. Shall we go to our room, darling? Our room? The thought of it was both thrilling and frightening at the same time. My heart began beating frantically as Robert led me from the dining room stairway to the suite that looked over the beach and the sea. Entering the room, we both were so nervous we couldn't speak. Standing in front of me, Robert unbuttoned his shirt and took it off. My fingers had minds of their own and went to my blouse and undid each button. Slowly, I took off my blouse and let it drop beside Robert's on the chair. My heart pounded. The wind made the curtains dance and the ocean outside roared against the beach, but all I really heard was the thumping of my own heart. Laura, he whispered. I didn't look down, but I felt his hands move on my waist. I kept my eyes closed. For a moment we didn't touch, we didn't move. It was as if we had brought each other to the brink, to the cliff from which we could never turn back or step forward. You're the most beautiful woman in the world, Laura. I love you so much. My heart aches. Wave after wave of warnings drifted over me, but my body was tingling, and the voices of restraint were dying under the rush of desire. I threw all my caution aside and made the eventful step forward. Before we knew it, we were in the bed, our heads comfortably resting against the fluffy pillows, and our bodies entwined under the cool sheets. This really is our honeymoon, he said. We joined. I moaned and I cried. I grasped his hair so hard I wasn't sure he was in pain, but he didn't resist or complain. I felt the tears streaming down my cheeks, and when he felt them, he kissed them away. When it was over, we lay there, still entwined, both of us breathing hard. Then I gazed down and saw the blood on the bedsheet. Oh no, look, I said. Don't worry, I'll take care of that. He started to smile, and I pulled away from him, spinning around, pressing my face to the pillow. Laura, he said, pressing his palm to my back. I love you. I felt like I'd fallen back to earth, like I'd been traveling on a cloud, and suddenly it turned gray and somber, and it began to rain down on the sea marina, releasing me along with the raindrops. My heart was still pounding, but my mind was clearing, the thoughts rushing like the water from an opening. We had done it. I had gone too far. I lost control. Or I simply wanted it as much as Robert. Was it a sin to want it? Was all Daddy taught and preached true? And would he take one look at me and read the sin in my eyes? Would it break his heart? I thought about Carrie too, about his distrust of all the boys who looked at me and spoke to me. Nothing would convince him that this was good, pure, and beautiful. He would say I had simply become someone's little trophy. Laura, what's wrong? Robert asked softly. I don't know what came over me. Why, how... Laura, we didn't do anything wrong. We love each other. Don't start feeling guilty. Why shouldn't I feel guilty, Robert? I snapped and got up to get my clothes. This is exactly what everyone would thought would happen. Every accusing eye and every word, every sneer. But we didn't do anything wrong. We love each other, want each other. I drank too much wine, I said, flailing about for an excuse. You don't mean that, Laura. You don't mean the only reason you made love to me was because you got drunk. Robert lay there looking at me with such pain in his eyes. I don't know what I mean, I wailed. I just feel like we went too far. We ruined something true and pure. Okay. He held up his hands. I'm sorry. I didn't mean that it was foolish or anything. But you know in your heart this is what you wanted too. That's just it. Maybe I did, but maybe I was wrong to want it. You weren't wrong, he insisted. That's something boys usually say, I shot back. Not this boy. I say what's true and good for us. I don't find myself in bed with every girl I meet, and I don't fall in love with every girl I meet, but I fell in love with you. I put on my sandals and looked at him. I better go home, I said. Laura, please, Robert, I just want to go home. You're punishing yourself unfairly, he said, rising. He started to dress. I'll go down and clean up while you dress, I said. You better do something about that bedsheet, too. It's all right, I can do it later. I left anyway and headed downstairs. I was already clearing the table when he caught up with me. He seized my wrist. I said, don't do that, Laura. I will do it. Stop this. Stop punishing yourself. I tried to swallow but couldn't. I just stood there nodding softly. He embraced me and held me and stroked my hair. Laura, 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 he sang. If I thought I made you unhappy. I'm all right, I said, straightening. Just take me home. I'll feel better after I get some sleep. That's right. Things always look better in the morning, don't they? Not always, I said prophetically. I looked back at the dining room table. Our dinner had been so beautiful, so dreamlike. Then why was I so confused, so twisted with mixed feelings? All the way home, Robert conjoined, pleaded, and begged me not to think poorly of him or myself. He repeated his love for me, and he swore he would go to all the ends of the earth to follow me if he had to. He said he'd rather walk on fire than hurt me in any way ever. I tried to talk, but all my words got jumbled and stuck in my throat. All I did was look out the window at the dark ocean and the crashing waves. I didn't understand my own feelings. How could I explain them to him? Give me some time, I told him when we arrived at my house. Sadly, he nodded. I was hoping this would be a special night. It was, I said. I kissed him quickly and ran to the front door. I didn't turn to wave back. I went inside and up to my room before anyone could see my face. Then I went to the bathroom, threw cold water on my cheeks, and went... Laura, is that you, honey? I heard Mommy call from the doorway. Yes, Mommy. Everything all right? Yes, Mommy, I just had to go to the bathroom. I said, I'm fine. Okay, would you like some hot chocolate? No, Mommy, I ate and drank enough. Oh, is Miss Royce a good cook? I swallowed and closed my eyes. Robert told me she was a good cook. Yes, Mommy, I said. I felt like I had stuck pins in my own throat. No one believed in me more than Mommy, and no one would refuse more to believe I had lied or been deceitful. That's nice, dear. You can tell me about it tomorrow if you want. Good night, Laura. Good night, Mommy. I heard her go to her room. Then I took a deep breath and got ready for bed. I tossed and turned all night, seeing myself in the rowboat, being flown from one wave to another, the sky black and full of cold rain. Out of the storm clouds, Daddy's face appeared, raging. A long finger of accusation pointed at me from the heavens. You sinned, he bellowed. It was a chant caught in the wind. You have sinned. I woke up in a cold sweat. I have sinned. I haven't. I love Robert and he loves me. That's not a sin. I pressed my hand to my mouth, embarrassed to find myself talking out loud. Slowly I lowered my head to the pillow and stared into the darkness until my eyes grew heavy again and I couldn't keep them open. Sunlight burst into my room like a bird crashing madly into a window. My eyes snapped open and I sat up quickly. I perspired so much during the night, my nightgown was cold and wet. I pulled it off my body and went to take a warm shower, turning my face in the water and letting it pound on my closed eyes. No one but Carrie seemed to notice how quiet I was at breakfast. Daddy was excited about the new location they discovered for lobster fishing, and the talk of days' work dominated the conversation. Every once in a while, Carrie glanced at me, and I could see from the way he studied me that he sensed something was wrong. Every time his questioning gaze met mine, I glanced away quickly. I was eager for everyone to finish eating so I could escape to the kitchen and help Mommy clean up. Carrie poked his head through the kitchen doorway just as Mommy and I were finishing. "I'm going over to the bog," he said, "if you and May want to come along." "Go ahead, dear," Mommy said. "We're almost done." I know it's not as exciting as it used to be, Carrie snapped. "Forget it." "No," I cried. He looked back surprised. "I'd like to go. I'll get May." We joined him outside, all three of us, just as we used to, and walked over to the beach to our cranberry bog. It was all in blossom, and it looked like a pale pink ocean. "Daddy says it'll be a fair crop this year, but no record breaker," Carrie remarked. He leaned over and inspected some of the blossoms. We didn't harvest until the fall, and even with everyone helping, it was still quite a process. It was Carrie's job to run one of the harvesting machines. He had been doing it since he was 10. "Looks healthy," he remarked. He gave May a blossom, then he sat down with a twig in his mouth and gazed out at the ocean. "So how was your dinner? Are you a member of their family yet?" "No, Carrie, and you don't have to be sarcastic. We had a nice dinner," I added quickly. He glanced at me. "Everything all right?" "Yes," I said. "You don't look all that happy this morning." "I've been thinking a lot about things," I said. "Oh? Things I have to work out for myself," I added. He grimaced. "Used to be a time when you and I trusted each other with our problems, Laura." "It's not that I don't trust you, Carrie. Sometimes girls just have to deal with girls' issues. Issues boys won't be able to understand." "Sure," he said, his mouth twisted with skepticism. "I'm telling you the truth, Carrie Logan. You don't have to sneer at everything I say." "You mean you're not going to discuss this with your precious boyfriend?" "Carrie." "What?" "Nothing," I said, shaking my head, my tears escaping from the corners of my eye. "What is it, Laura?" he asked with a face full of concern. "Boys are just boys," I cried and got up. I tried running down the sand hill, but the sand had a way of giving, and I knew I looked clumsy and foolish, nearly losing my balance as I hurried back to the house. All that day I found myself bursting into tears for no reason or warning. I tried to hide my face and spent most of my time alone in my room under the guise of studying for finals. The truth was, my eyes floated over the pages of my notes, my mind not grasping any of the lessons. Robert called, but I kept our conversation short, and I heard the unhappiness of his voice when I ended the call. I returned to my room, and my mind once again returned to the night before. "Why?" I demanded in a voice of annoying conscience. "Why should I feel any guilt? I love Robert, and I believe he loves me. What we did, all people who are in love do. But other people wait until the proper time, until they're blessed, until they swear their love and loyalty before God in a church," my conscience in Daddy's voice replied. "No," I shook my head. "Love is what's holy, not words pronounced by a priest. Love, pure and simple." "Is it love? Can you be so sure, so positive? Will you be in love like this next year? Will Robert?" "Yes." Yes, yes, I shouted at my thoughts. Suddenly there was a gentle knock on my door. I quickly wiped away my tears with the back of my hand. Who is it? Carrie opened the door and leaned in. Laura, if I did something to upset you or hurt your feelings today, I'm sorry, he said. I just wanted you to know that before you went to sleep. You didn't, I said, but thanks. Good night, Laura. Good night, Carrie. He closed the door and walked softly away. During the following week, Robert would leave a letter at my locker at the end of every day. Each letter he declared his love for me, more than the letter he had previously written. I want to apologize to you, Laura, but I tell myself what we did wasn't wrong, and neither you nor I should feel guilty about it. I love you, and only you, and making love is the only another way of saying it. There's no one to forgive, he added. I tied his letters up and kept them hidden in my desk at home, reading and rereading them so much I thought the words were starting to fade. I wanted to believe every word he wrote and everything he said to me. I wanted that more than anything. And I fought hard to silence the voice of conscience that berated me and threatened me with punishments and damnation. Every night that week at dinner, Daddy seemed to pick the readings in the Bible as if he knew what was going on in my mind. One night, Isaiah chapter 1, Ah, sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, a seed of evildoers, children that are corrupters. I looked down at my lap, and when I looked up, I felt the heat in my face and Carrie's penetrating gaze, his face still full of question and concern. The next night it was my turn, and Daddy asked me to read from Romans 8. I began, but my voice cracked when I read. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. My throat closed, and I had to stop, pretending to be choking on something that I nibbled before we sat to the table. I drank some water, and Carrie scooped up the Bible and completed reading it for me. Daddy looked at me with troubled eyes. Are you all right, Laura? Mommy asked. Yes, Mommy. Maybe you're working too hard on your schoolwork, she said. You should take a day off, maybe go sailing and enjoy the beach. I'll see, Mommy, I said. I'll be fine. Robert's letters kept coming, his pleading growing more frantic as I continued to remain aloof in school. He was absent on Thursday, and since Carrie was already eating with friends, I sat with Teresa Patterson in the cafeteria. You look lost without Robert, she said. Where is he? I don't know. I guess he wasn't feeling well this morning. Teresa's dark eyes searched my face, then she moved a little closer. There's a lot of girls who are jealous of you, Laura. Most of them would steal him away if they could. Can they? She asked with a small smile on her lips. I don't own him, Teresa. Nobody owns anybody else, I replied. She shook her head. That's not the right answer, Laura. You should be a tiger when it comes to holding on to your man. See Maggie Williams there? She'd jump you and tear out your hair so much as if you batted your eyelashes at artists. Everything all right with you and Robert? She finally asked. Yes, I said. I know that boy dotes on you, Laura. That's why the other girls are making all that hissing about you and him and Carrie. They're jealous. Good, she said. I like to see them eat their hearts out, she added, glaring at the girls across the room, the ones who would never be seen sitting beside a Brava. She turned back to me. You make that boy happy, Laura. He'll make you happy. Know what I mean? She said, winking. I shook my head. If you're a good lover, your lover's good to you, she said and laughed. Never mind. I don't want to pry, but I warn you, she sang. You turn your back on him once, and Robert Royce is going to get snatched away. Was she right, I wondered? Was Robert losing patience with me? Would he turn away, and would I regret it forever? If only these answers were more easy as the answers that came to me for my final exams, I thought. Life would be so simple.